Welcome to Hockey Nights in Vegas, episode 59. The sky is falling. The sky is falling. The Golden Knights lost a game. What are we going to do? The sky is falling. My name is Eddie Rivkin. I'm joined as always by Lindsey Brown of Lotus Broadcasting and Chris Chapman of Fox Sports Las Vegas. This episode, along with all others, is brought to you by the Las Vegas Advisor, www.lasvegasadvisor.com. Your home for everything Las Vegas. Gambling tips, restaurant tips, show tips. If you just want to vent about how unhappy you are about the Formula One race, let them have it because you're a local and you just don't understand. But anyway, and we're also brought to you by Dr. John Pierce at agelessforever.net, www.agelessforever.net. My very good friend John Pierce, concierge medicine. If you want the best service, the best treatment, highly individualized for you, look up my friend Dr. John Pierce at www.agelessforever.net. Our special guest is barking in the background, but we'll get to him later. But unfortunately, the Golden Knights are not going to go the entire season without losing a game in regulation. After a dog walking, boat racing, ass whipping, smackdown son of a bitch on the Colorado Avalanche, 7-0. They hung a touchdown on them, and we'll get to that. They went into Anaheim and they gave up a 2-goal lead and eventually ended up losing 4-2. So the sky's not really falling. But which was it's kind of a dumb fucking question. Skip that. I was going to ask which is more significant, the win over Colorado or the loss to Anaheim. But let's talk about the Avalanche game first. We were all there. We were all psyched. We thought it was going to be the heavyweight slug, Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, WrestleMania feature. And it really wasn't much more than an exercise on how to beat up an opponent. Right? Well, who wants to chirp in on the Avs game?
It was probably not. The game ended 7-0, and there's people who say, well, the score is what it is, right? And look, you don't score 7 goals by accident. But I felt like it wasn't necessarily a game that felt like 7-0 in favor of the Golden Knights. Like they didn't come out and just kick the shit out of the Avalanche like the score indicates. The Avs played pretty well, I thought, through the first period and a half. And then the Golden Knights just kind of turned it up a notch. And, where the game changed, I thought, was the power play goal, right? Like, once the Golden Knights got that first power play goal, I'm sorry, was it a shorthanded goal?
Mark Stone had the shorthanded goal in the first period.
That's kind of where the game changed for me. Like, obviously, there was no comeback from the Avs after that. But I thought the shorthanded goal was really kind of like the change of the game where the Golden Knights said, all right, you know what? We're going to show you we're a better team. And they flexed their muscle big time. You had 3 guys, with 2 goals each. And then William Carrier, who scored 3 goals in the last, I feel like week and a half to kind of fall in there. But I thought Adin Hill played a really good game. Obviously, he gets a shutout, but I felt like he earned the shutout. Like, Colorado had some good opportunities, I felt, in that game. But I mean, it was the flex. It was like, look, you know what? They're not going to say it was a statement, but what they did say, it was a
measuring stick
game. Yeah, fuck, I lost the word. I was thinking sign on the road game, and I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? But yeah, it was a measuring stick game for them. And that's the way they approached it. Look, obviously Colorado will play better the next time these two teams play. You would think, right, for a team that has aspirations of winning a Stanley Cup, you'd think that there'd be a little bit of pride. One of the funny things is I bumped into Connor McGahey, who, if you've been watching this team since early on, he was the pre and post and intermission host early in the season, or early in the Golden Knights early development or early stages on television, and he's now the Avs play-by-play guy on the radio. And I said, "Hey, how you doing, buddy?" He's like, "Man, I'm fucking in the booth by myself. What do you think?" So obviously making a joke about how bad the game was from the Colorado perspective. But yeah, I mean, look, it was a great game if you're a Golden Knights fan. I thought there were some really good things. Obviously, the special teams play sticks out to me. And look, anytime you get a shutout, no complaints about that at all.
Yeah, I just want to kind of loop back to the Mark Stone shorthanded goal and just like how impressive it was, because it was kind of like a very elongated give and go. Like we see give and goes when they're really close. Like you think of Gretzky's office, right? You have the puck load high and you work across the net and it's kind of like a quick bang bang play. But that was shorthanded, and that he passed the puck back up to the top of his zone and then it went back down to him. And just like what the vision that takes that he always has, but especially in the situational awareness of having probably the Avs not exactly on their P's and Q's when it came to the break. I know Makar was kind of banged up on that play as well, but I thought that goal was important for them to get in the first period, especially since, like you said, Chap, the first half of the game was pretty competitive. And then the Avs just made a few too many mistakes. Like Nichushkin had that puck turnover on the boards high in the Avs defensive zone. And then the Golden Knights were so good at pressuring. And so Mark Stone just like streaked down the slot and then he hit Carrier on the back door. How many plays have we seen of perfect passes to the back door so far this season, whether it's been off of turnovers or a lot of goals on the rush? Like, have you noticed that, Eddie?
They sort of changed a little bit.
They changed their offense a lot.
They were much more measured, I think is probably the right word. Mm-hmm. Not maybe controlled. Maybe some of it has to do with finding their way in Bruce Cassidy's system, but they're definitely playing a lot freer right now.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still
creatively.
They're absolutely still rock solid in their own zone, but they're letting loose a little bit. And forget the 7-0. It is what it is. But the game never felt in question to me. There are games against Colorado where the Vegas Golden Knights get dog walked for 5 or 6 or 7 minutes, and you think this is the beginning of the end. There have been segments where Colorado was completely dominant I'm talking about in previous games against the Golden Knights, and it went back and forth, the Tahoe game and all of that other stuff. But in that game, as we were sitting there, I never felt that sort of pucker, like here come the Avs. They had some pressure. They had 41 shots, right? But there was never, holy shit, here comes the goal or the penalty.
Did you notice Nathan McKinnon that much at all? Because, like, unless he's bull-washing people over, sometimes he disappears. And it pains me to say that because he's such a physical presence and force. But I don't think this Avs team has the same teeth without Landeskog, and they certainly don't have the depth scoring that they were missing from Kadri.
Well, to me, he's the key to the kingdom.
Yeah, that type of scoring, that type of scrapper. He starts shit. He checks a lot of boxes for you.
I really like Kadri, and I hate the fact that he's kind of wasting away right now in Calgary because they suck, and it's
want to chase the bag.
But he kind of, and I know they're not exactly the same player, but he kind of has that Barbashev type of edge to his game. There's some guys who have it, and there's other guys.
9 minutes and 46 seconds till the first Ivan Barbashev reference.
By the way, he scored on Sunday.
Crush Tuesday, yes.
Real quick on the power play goal. Last thing I'll say about that was we talked to Mark Stone after the game, and I don't remember who it was who asked him. I'm surprised it wasn't me because I aside from having a man crush on Ivan Barbashev, I have one on Brady McNabb, and he was asked about the play that McNabb made. And I feel like it goes to the fact that this team has so much continuity and the fact that there's so little turnover from last season to this season. And he was asked, and his answer was, well, I knew that Braden wasn't going to shoot it. It was just on me to make sure that I put the puck in the net. Like he almost subconsciously knew what Brady McNabb was going to do with the puck before Brady McNabb knew what he was going to do with the puck. And it just comes from knowing each other so well. I mean, those two have been on the penalty kill together for so many years. I mean, it seems like basically from the second season when Mark Stone arrived that him and McNabb have been on that penalty kill unit number one together for that long. I mean, we're talking 5 years now that those two guys have been playing together on that unit. And, you know, knowing what the other player on the ice is going to do and having that just understanding and not only that, but the execution to be able to do that. I mean, yeah, Stone gets a ton of credit for the goal, but the pass by McNabb was so on point that I think I could have put that puck in the net. And that's not to say that Mark Stone didn't do was really good, but I mean, the pass was that good that a lot of players should have scored that, and Mark Stone took care of business. He did exactly what he was supposed to do there.
Well, and Eddie, to your point earlier about how well the Golden Knights are playing in their defensive zone, especially that night with Adin Hill, he wasn't popping out a lot of rebounds, but the ones that he was, the Golden Knights defensemen were whacking them away. And I don't know if it was because they had free and clear access to do that, or if the Avs weren't getting to that inside lane. Like, they just didn't look like they had that next level within them. And then all of that net clearing help that the defensemen were extending to Adin Hill, they did not have in the third period in Anaheim for Logan Thompson. And that's why they lost the game.
Let me ask you this, and we'll clean up the segment on the Avs game. Take the series win over the Avs, throw out the Tahoe game. Does it feel to you like maybe the Golden Knights have the Avalanche number?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Overall, yeah.
I think so.
You know what I mean? There was just Colorado, justifiably so, came in with a lot of confidence. But I think it's probably similar to if I asked you, do you think that after the Edmonton series, maybe the Golden Knights are super inside the Oilers' head?
Because neither of those teams have beat the Golden Knights in the playoffs, because the Avs didn't have to face them the year that they won. And
right.
The year prior, they ran into them. And I think that's absolutely true. And, you know, I'm who's to say if the Golden Knights would have been in the playoffs and they met with the Avs, if the Avs would have won the cup or not. Like, who knows? We'll never know. But I think there's something to be said about the veteran leadership and the gnarliness that this roster plays with in the postseason and what they bring to these matchups. Because like you said, these games are really good usually, and they're really fast paced. And I just don't think in the grander scheme of the league that a lot of teams can keep up with them. So when they do encounter teams that can match them or even beat them in some areas of their game or take it to them, that in many ways you're kind of like, oh, I don't know how to handle all this adversity. It's kind of like Boston last year, right? All of a sudden you lose a couple games and everybody's confidence in Linus Ullmark just went away because they hadn't gone through it yet. And so I think that's important, and they still haven't been able to figure it out. And so and that victory the other night, I mean, that's a big recent chapter to have looming over their head. I don't know when the next time they play is. But you get smacked around like that, it's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth for a long time.
Well, yeah, and look, they were in that playoff series the last time they met. The Avalanche were up 2-0, and you thought, oh, boy, this is not going to end well. But if memory serves correct, the Golden Knights were better than the Avalanche in that second game. They just happened to lose.
Significantly better in that game.
Yeah, and so since that moment, I mean, look, the Avs have got their cup, so certainly – you know, kudos to them. And, you know, it's pretty cool that they've got theirs because they have a really good group of players there that I enjoy watching play. But, yeah, I mean, the Golden Knights just seem to bring out their best games when they play against the Avalanche. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just stylistically, it's a good matchup for them. But, I mean, especially since Bruce Cassidy's arrived, I feel like the Golden Knights are significantly better than the Colorado Avalanche.
I agree. So we can do one of two things. I have two other topics I'd like to talk about, or we could spend some time on the Anaheim game. I'll leave it to you two to decide, and we'll run with it. Anybody really want to talk about the Anaheim game, or do we just want to say?
I'll just say that about this. If anyone's upset that they lost,
shut up.
Get over it. Like seriously, get over it. Like, they're going to lose games. They're going to lose a few more before the end of the season. I don't think you could be disappointed that they lost. I think you can be disappointed that they were up 2-0 in the third period. and didn't put the Ducks away. But look, the Ducks have been playing really well. The Ducks went back east and they won a bunch of games against pretty good teams on the East Coast. They lead the NHL and come from behind wins. So, give credit to Anaheim. They may not be there at the end, but they're playing really good hockey right now. And it seems like their core of good young players has finally figured it out. Mason McTavish was really good in that game for Anaheim. I mean, don't be upset that they lost a game. You can be disappointed they blew a 2-0 lead, and I get that. And it seems like they haven't lost to Jonathan Gibson like in the history of the franchise. But the reality is the Ducks are better than I think a lot of people thought they would be at this point. And they've already won 7 games this season. It took them to the 27th game of the season last year to get their 7th win. So clearly they're much improved. They're a much better team. And as a fan of the game and loving watching young players turn into superstars, I hope that they're there till the end because it's fun. It's fun to watch teams like that play. And I think I've always liked John Gibson, and I like to see him have an opportunity to maybe play in the playoffs again because it's been since 2017, 2018 that the Ducks have been in the playoffs. So it'd be nice to see them get back. I don't think they'll be there at the end, but you never know. And maybe they're that team that, everyone was talking Ottawa, Buffalo, and Detroit as being the team that make that next step forward. Maybe it's the Ducks. So give them credit. They played a good game. They deserve that win.
I want to talk about the first 2 goals that Jack Eichel is involved in because he was finally driving that net like I've been asking him. He wasn't settling for outside shots. He wasn't settling for outside passes. And that first goal, let's remind ourselves, was that dish very late to the back door and a tight pass to Barbashev. Like they weren't very far apart. Like it's impressive when you see those short consecutive passes in such a short window. And Barbashev drives hard to the left post. I highlight this because it's important for the second goal that Jack Eichel scores in the context in which John Gibson was existing. And as much as I want to see John Gibson in the playoffs, Chapman, if he's approaching shots like this, I don't want to see him in the playoffs because it's not going to go well for him. And there's some bad habits that are creeping into his game. And that's okay because if you're playing for a crappy team that gets shelled all the time, that's what's going to happen sometimes. And so I hope they can regain that and find their way back to the promised land. But that second goal, let's remember Jack Eichel is taking that puck up the right side on the rush. And he's a right-handed shot. And that's important to note because that allows him to protect that puck from the defenseman from the inside lane. And it gives him access to a more extreme angle against John Gibson, right? Because if it's on the inside, if he's left-handed, then it's a more center lane. And the goalie doesn't have to move as much because John Gibson decided to gap out to what we call in the goalie world the 45 part of the crease, which is the corner of the crease where your belly button is basically tied to the blue line on the boards. And what John Gibson does and what Jack Eichel does is that he's given basically a free pass to the net, which is a bad play by the defenseman for the Ducks. So he didn't really do John Gibson any favors. But Eichel lets that shot go from basically the dots. And if you look at where Gibson is standing, his feet are already halfway back in the crease. He was not ready for that shot, even though he was already giving up ground like he was expecting, I don't know, a backdoor pass because that was the exact play that had played out for the first goal against. But with that, you can tell as well in the way that Gibson reacts because if you see him, he's holding his glove right where his hips are. He's tracking that puck. And when the shot is let go, he reacts with a shoulder shrug up instead of turning his hand up or out. That's a goalie that doesn't know where he is and that doesn't really, he's reading the play more than he's reading the shot. And so this is where I'm trying to figure out if Jack Eichel's toying with us, right? If he is playing on such a level where he can build off and say, well, I pulled the goalie and we did this play earlier. No, I'm going to play off of that decision because he's going to know that we're going to be looking for that play again. Because if you look, William Karlsson's crashing backdoor hard. And that play is going to be there all season long as whoever's out on the ice with him, Marshy, Barbie, Karlsson, whoever. You're seeing that rush pass a lot so far from this Golden Knights offense and on the power play as well. And so I just found it really impressive what Jack was able to achieve and just pulling that trigger when he recognized that Gibson was too far back to make the play because he was in no man's land. He should either be gapped out further and taking away that angle, or you go to the post, which is the lesser of the two options because then you're conceding ground and all of a sudden you have that upper area, his glove side, his left side of the net wide open. Like Jack Eichel's going to hit that shot almost 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10. Against a lesser player, the defenseman doesn't have to play it that hard. He doesn't have to play it perfect. And Gibson could probably get away with that. But against Jack Eichel, not going to work.
Well, I think, I mean, there was no way that he was going to be 3 for 44 shooting. You know, it
No.
just, I mean, and now, you know, he talked about it, I guess, maybe it was in the first intermission or it was the pregame of the following game where he said, Ashley asked him a question. He said, well, I haven't scored a goal in a year.
Yeah. And you feel that, right? That pressure as it builds up. And so to set up Barbie the way he did, because he could have taken that shot initially and probably given Gibson some
Same
tough
result.
times. But by going to Barbashev on that back door, that opened him wide open for that second chance. And he's going to be able to toy and go back and forth. And the only person I see doing that in this league, and it's not happening lately, is Connor McDavid when he tries to go behind the net and bank it off the goalie's shoulder from behind. Like, you know, where it's just like he's thinking differently because he's moving faster and it gives him access to a new level of creativity. But I'm just glad that Eichel decided to take initiative and drive towards that net instead of pulling up in the high zone. William Karlsson used to do this all the time on zone entries. And it stagnates everyone. And then it creates easier opportunities for the puck to get out and go the other way in odd man rushes or worse.
You know, I don't know how many people were aware, because I certainly wasn't, but Saturday night was his 2-year anniversary of being traded to the Golden Knights. Mm-hmm. And he celebrated by scoring 2 goals, and he followed it up by scoring a goal against Anaheim. Look, I know, Eddie, you said getting warmed up. Well, I mean, he's starting to warm up. And I think we're just starting to scratch the surface of who Jack Eichel is going to be in the NHL. Look, I don't make the determination whether or not the guy's a superstar or not. In my opinion, Jack Eichel is a star player. He's obviously not at the level of McDavid, but he's in that second tier of elite players. And
but he doesn't need to be.
You're right.
He's in bursts.
He doesn't need to be, but I feel like
he doesn't have to do everything.
There's a saying about big time players show up in big time games.
Yep.
Well, Jack Eichel is that guy. He was a big time player on Saturday night in a big time game. You know, he doesn't need to be that guy, but I feel like when he is that guy, this team, they're not the type of team that has to where the players rely on Jack Eichel to be that guy. They have so much depth. You know, like you look at the blue line right now, and they're missing. They were missing Martinez. They're still missing White Cloud. They're missing Haig, and it's like they don't miss a beat. You know, the team is so deep, and there's so many guys who not only are capable, but are confident that they can step up when they need to. You know, guys like William Carrier, 3 goals, as I mentioned, in the last, I feel like 5 games or so. He missed Thursday against Winnipeg because he had a cold, I guess, or he was sick. But Pavel Dorofeyev, he comes in. He's putting up points. I mean, you look at, and I know that we talk a lot about Cotter, but you look at the production of Pavel Dorofeyev, and it's really, really good in a small sample size. So he's another guy that I think can play in the league. But to get back to the original point, they don't look at Jack as, oh my God, we need Jack to carry us. Like when Jack is that superstar player, it's better for the team because they're already so deep that they don't need to rely on him to be that guy. And they have other guys who can step up in specific moments. But you know, the point is, he is an elite player. He doesn't need to be an elite player every single night like we're seeing in Edmonton, because that team is built around one guy, well, 2 guys. The Golden Knights aren't built around Jack Eichel or Mark Stone. They are a total team, and Jack Eichel is basically, he is the icing on top of the cake.
The last thing I want to say about Jack Eichel, and I hope he's watching, please shoot more on the half wall on the power play. If you watch the warm-ups, viewers of Hockey Nights in Vegas, Jack Eichel practices that one-timer from the dot every single game. Marchessault does it from the same spot, and a couple other guys do it from other areas like Shea and stuff like that. But if that becomes a threat, if that becomes like a known entity to opponents of the Golden Knight, that Eichel's going to take that shot off the half wall instead of being on the power play. He's primarily a distributor. He definitely is not shot first on the power play. But if he uncorks that lethality from the dot 3 or 4 more times, where teams have to start planning for it or expecting it. Listen, I'm not going to say it's Ovi-like or anything like that, but adding that dimension to the power play, his willingness to shoot off coming off the half wall inbound to the dot, is only going to make their power play significantly better. Chris, you talked about plug and play on defense. I think that the kids deserve their own segment. Pahal, Korczak. Hutton's not really a kid, but he's sort of, I feel like he's the father figure.
Yeah.
to defense number 6,
figure.
7, 8, and 9. Well, he's
Adam Sandler and Big Daddy, like an unwilling parent.
Yeah, but I mean, he's got like 300 NHL games, but it's fantastic to watch the fact that 3 of the starting 6D were out of the lineup. And if you didn't have jersey numbers and you just watched the game, there was 0 drop off.
Yeah.
And the fact that Coach Cassidy clearly trusts both Pahal and Korczak, he's being a little picky on how he plays them. The grittier games Pahal gets, seems like Korczak gets more of the finessey sort of opponents. But the bottom line is those kids are seamlessly integrated now into the Golden Knights, I guess you would say, rotation. I don't think I'm confident in saying that there is certainly not a team that has 9 guys that can snap into a lineup. And, that's system for sure, but it's also, how they're taught. And the fact that, again, Bruce Cassidy has complete confidence in all 3 of them. I mean, I thought Ben Hutton has been fantastic.
Agreed.
The fact that he goes 2 and 3 weeks and doesn't play a game, and then they say, "Oh, Huddy, we need you tonight," and he, Bruce said the best breakout is a one-man breakout, right? Huddy takes the puck up the ice, and I didn't know he was that good a skater, but he set up a goal where he literally skated all the way through the neutral zone and made a perfect vertical pass with not much room, and it led directly to a goal. So, I'm really impressed with the 2 kids and their dad, Ben Hutton.
I'm not sure how Ben would like that, but actually he might, because he's a bit of a funny guy, so he probably would totally get the joke and laugh about it. But you're right, Eddie, because I feel like the ultimate compliment that Caden Korczak was paid was when he was compared to Zach Whitecloud. Like, Zach Whitecloud to me is the consummate professional. Like, he's a guy who I feel like every young kid coming into the league, especially with this franchise, should look at and learn how to do things the right way, because Zach Whitecloud is that guy. But even on the ice, Korczak has a similar type of game to Whitecloud, whereas Pahal has that he's going to hit you, and he's going to make sure that he's there. I mean, he got into it the other night with someone from Colorado. I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Logan O'Connor.
No, it was the guy that played in New Jersey.
Oh yeah, Miles.
It was Miles Wood.
And Pahal was not backing down. He's like, "You're not going to fucking push me around." So Pahal has a little bit more grit in his game, like you said, whereas Korczak has a little bit more finesse. And I feel like with Hutton, he's just, the reason he wasn't playing was the side that he shoots from. I feel like he's probably the first choice. But when you have right-handed shooters out, I can't remember if he's a left-handed or right-handed shooter, and they needed a right-handed shooter in there, but he shot from the wrong side. It was a circumstantial thing. It wasn't they don't have confidence in him thing. But when he's called upon, you would never know, like you said, that he's a guy who maybe hasn't seen the ice in a game in 2 or 3 weeks. Like, there's a reason why Ben Hutton had his name on the cup. What continues to fascinate me about Ben Hutton is how did every team in the league except the Golden Knights miss it on this guy? Like, he was on his couch 2 years ago. 2 years ago, the guy was on his couch. He was out of the league, and he's not shy about talking about it and what the journey back. He was a guy who played a lot in this Pacific Division. And then all of a sudden, someone decided that he wasn't good enough, which to me is bullshit, because if you watch Ben Hutton play, I don't know how you could ever come up with the assumption that he's not good enough to at least be on a team in the league. But it's about taking advantage of your opportunities. Ben Hutton is kind of like, they always say when you rescue a dog, how much more loyal and how much more loving that dog is to you because he appreciates and understands that second chance. Well, Ben Hutton got that second opportunity. I mean, I'm not saying he's a dog, but he's like a bit like a rescue dog. Because,
you kind of did, but
because he was on the couch, he was out of the league. He was in the pound for NHL players, and the Golden Knights, they rang him up and said, "Hey, you want to come in?" And I don't even think he was a guy who they anticipated being here as long as he has been. I felt like there were a rash of injuries, and maybe he was just kind of a fill-in guy, but he impressed enough. And he's a guy who turned being out of the league and on the couch into being a Stanley Cup champ, and a guy who he can fill in. Like, there's a lot of teams I look around the NHL, and he would absolutely, without question, be playing every single night for a bunch of teams in this league.
Well, he's definitely waiver proof.
Yeah, they're not going to waive that guy. Yeah,
no way.
The Oilers just waived Jack Campbell.
Ooh.
Oh, no soup for you.
Yeah, no soup for you. So I heard it. So that means when they put him on waivers, like teams, you can put a claim on him to put him on the team, or once he clears waivers, he has to go down. He goes down to their Bakersfield affiliate in the AHL, where he's going to be making NHL money, because I'm assuming he's on a 2-way contract or on a 1-way contract.
Yeah.
But they're going to be calling up Calvin Pickard up instead, who is on a 2-way contract. And so hopefully Soup can go find his game down in Bakersfield, because the Oilers are they couldn't stop a beach ball right now. And he's not even the worst of the two. Like, Skinner's worse, but they're not going to send Skinner down because somebody will take a chance on Skinner and claim him off of waivers, but they won't do it for Campbell.
Well, Calvin Pickard, former Golden Knight Calvin Pickard, he was, Eddie, you may remember this, Lindsey, and you probably don't because you weren't here, but the Golden Knights drafted Calvin Pickard in the expansion draft. He was supposed to be their backup to Marc-Andre Fleury.
Yep.
And then history changed when Malcolm Subban was waived by the Boston Bruins, and the Golden Knights picked him up. Calvin Pickard never played a game for the Golden Knights, but the one piece of notable history involving Calvin Pickard and the Golden Knights was the team had a contest to design his goalie mask. And it was this big, huge promotion. And the guy never played a game with the team. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what became of that mask, but I mean, good for him. He's a guy who's bounced around a lot. Not a guy I feel totally confident in changing the fortunes of the Edmonton Oilers. Jack Campbell, a guy who I don't think will be claimed because he just makes way too much money. He was really good in Toronto, and then, sometimes guys have that big year in their free agent year, and they hit the jackpot. It just has never worked for him in Edmonton, and I don't see a team picking him up. So the Oilers are going to have to eat that money, and he might be here in Bakersfield. I don't know when the Silver Knights will play them, but he's a guy who you may see at Dollar Loan Center in the very near future.
I think we're going to start a segment now. We can't use news and notes because
You already have
Some
those.
Golden Knights broadcaster uses that for a segment. Mallard. but I like something like haha headlines because there's three funny things that I enjoyed around the NHL recently. The first one is my new whipping boy, the head coach of the Edmonton Oilers, was ejected for a game from unsportsmanlike conduct, and then they went out and they got shellacked again by Vancouver 6-2 yesterday. And now, what we discussed in episode 58, do we think he's on the hot seat? Well, the water's boiling, and
his toes are in.
Yeah, the pundits that I have read in the last couple of days say that they better get to 500 by game 20 or it's over for him. So
if they lose to San Jose, which is their next game, he's done.
It's done.
It's done. Especially with the way that the team unraveled towards the end of that game last night against Vancouver.
Well, that was going to be ejected. I think he got ejected in the third period. And
but the players,
they were on the power play at the time when he got ejected. So not only did he kill the power play, which Vancouver later scored on, but yeah, he got tossed, I think, in the third period, and they were already getting boat raced in that one.
Draisaitl got a misconduct, so he was in the box until like 2 minutes left in the game. That's like when you're having your star players getting that level of frustrated, making stupid ass decisions like that. Like you're trying to come back in the game, and you're gonna go run your mouth or do some stupid shit and put yourself in the box and take away yourself for the team. You're one of the two players, right? Like don't be dumb.
I say this in all seriousness.
Uh-oh.
If things don't get better, and I mean quick, do they just start offloading pieces? Do they look to move Zach?
Which pieces?
What pieces are gonna? What pieces can they offload?
I mean,
Darnell Nurse.
Would you trade Draisaitl? That's what it's going to take. You need to trade Draisaitl. That's what it's going to take if you want to keep McDavid.
Well, Draisaitl's got this year and next at 8.25,
which is
a bargain for him.
Right? He's 12, right? 12 and a half all day, all night, twice on Sunday. But what are they going to do? Who wants Evander Kane?
Well, I don't necessarily think it's that. It's like I think Evander Kane could be a valuable piece for the right team, but his money is just
that's what I mean. Darnell Nurse is $8.5 million.
Yeah,
they're grossly mismanaged.
Matthias Ekholm, right? I mean, what pieces are they going to offload? Kyler Yamamoto,
Nugent Hopkins. I mean,
you'd have
he's
to
making
send picks.
something.
Like they're
screwed. 100 points last year.
Like they're screwed. You can't trade Nurse's contract without unloading picks, and they're not going to be good picks anyway because you're hoping they make the playoffs unless they're smart and they suck and they go on like a Patrick Line a year like the Jets did, right? Where they just sucked for a year and then they got a great lottery pick. Sure, the NHL would set them up real nice considering they had 3 number 1 overall draft picks last decade. But without like Draisaitl's manageable number and a team, like he's a bona fide scorer, like a team would bend over backwards. Most teams would bend over backwards. Not for Evander Kane, not for Darnell Nurse. Nugent Hopkins would probably be an easy sell, but I don't really want to sell him off the team because I think he does more things and he's probably one of their best players. Exactly. And then same with who's the guy that I always talk about? His last name starts with an H, and he's always on. He always does cleanup duty. Hyman. I love Zach Hyman. He's a great player. He does cleanup duty. Like you could sell him for a pretty penny, but then you're taking away Connor's security blanket. Like I thought Connor Brown was supposed to set this shit on fire. Like we're gonna bring in Connor's junior buddy. They're gonna set the league ablaze. Well, what the hell is going on? Connor can't score for shit because he can't get to the net and he doesn't have a good shot, so he can't score from long range. I'll say that. I'll say it. I don't give a shit because it's true. And they're so sidetracked.
Okay, one word answer. Does the Edmonton coach make it to game 21? They're 2-7-1.
So that's 10 games.
Right. Does he make it to game 21?
No.
I agree. No. The second headline is maybe the funniest thing I've read in a long time. San Jose Sharks GM puts players and coaches on notice. What notice? We suck? Where
They
we go?
notice. They already notice. They've been part of the games. They notice.
How do they not notice the 10 spot they got hung on them twice in a row? I just, and I feel bad for Mike Greer, right?
Yeah.
First bite at the apple as a GM, and his team is probably a slight favorite against UNLV. And, a dominant favorite against Gorman, but a slight favorite against UNLV.
Their goals against would beat the Raiders' offense.
But just the fact that headline, Sharks GM puts players and coaches on notice. Is next Friday's game a trap game? Yes or no?
It is.
Always when you're playing a shit team
when you play a borderline AHL team, yeah, it is. However, I think in this case, because it's the Sharks, and I think a lot will depend on how the Golden Knights play Wednesday night against the Kings, right? Like I can't think about San Jose until the Kings game, but
sure.
I do think that it is a trap game, especially if San Jose hasn't won a game at that point.
That was going to be the best prop bet. What happens first? The Golden Knights regulation loss or a San Jose win?
I will say this. I am glad in a way that the Golden Knights are not undefeated or no regulation losses going into that game, because had the whatever they would be Sharks beaten the 13-0-1 Golden Knights, I feel like it wouldn't have mattered to the Golden Knights, but the fan base would have been jumping off the fucking stratosphere. So we certainly don't want that. But it's a trap game just for the simple fact that the Sharks suck. And for them, it's their Stanley Cup final on November 10th. Think about it. It's their fucking Stanley Cup final, and we're not even a full month into the season yet. So it's the biggest game they're going to play all year. Their first game against the defending Stanley Cup champ, the Golden Knights. I also feel bad for Mike Greer. I don't feel bad for the Sharks. I don't feel bad for Tomas Hertl. He chose to stay there, right?
Yep.
Like he had the option, and I really like Tomas Hertl as a player, but he had the option to leave. Go make your money somewhere else. He chose to stay. I don't feel bad for a guy like that. I respect the loyalty, but I don't feel bad for him for being part of that losing franchise. The scary thought here, Eddie, Lindsey, is we know how bad the Sharks are. Like, we know they are maybe one of the, when it's all said and done, might finish with one of the worst 5 records in the history of the NHL since they expanded in the late 80s with, the teams to the West Coast and the teams to South Florida. But how bad are their guys in the AHL if they can't make this team? Like, how bad must those guys be?
Well, we talked about it. We wish the NHL could have a relegation system like the Premier League. I don't know who they'd bring up, but
here come the Charlotte Checkers, everyone. Say goodbye to the Sharks.
Here come the Boulder City Bronze Knights, ladies and gentlemen. The third headline is a little confusing, and I want to talk about Brad Marchand slew-footing the kid from Toronto, and there was no response whatsoever from the Leafs.
Shocker.
Yeah, Liljegren, right, is the one that went down.
Liljegren, right? And after the game, Sheldon Keefe apparently peeled a little paint that he was incredibly disappointed that there was no response. And then Ryan Reeves said that they talked about it in the room and it's taken care of. And film showed up of him apparently talking to Marchand and saying, "You're lucky I wasn't on the ice." But they played 2 or 3 shifts on the ice later in that game. And I think, besides Toronto being a complete dumpster fire and giving up a half a dozen goals a game, and
the Canadian media is literally on the edge of Vancouver's their best hope. That's literally what Elliot Friedman said yesterday. I'm like, Jesus, it's fallen a deep, deep, deep way.
But Toronto spent a bunch of dough on Ryan. Well, not a bunch, a decent amount of dough on Ryan Reeves.
Yeah,
a decent amount of money on Max Domi's kid, Domi's. Which one is it?
Max Domi's the kid.
Yeah.
Max is the sorry. It's a senior
Tyler
moment.
Bertuzzi, who was laughing at Marchand. They got footage of that. That didn't play well either.
Well,
Okay,
they were
so-
teammates last year in Boston, right? So Tyler
right.
Bertuzzi isn't going to be the guy that makes him answer the bell.
So the headline is, what the hell is going on in Toronto? And all of the grit, they're muffins.
Well, that's it.
Right?
You that's it. You nailed it. They're
Well,
soft. They're soft.
No, what they're doing is, well, they're soft, but they're also not scoring. The only person that is scoring on this team is Austin Matthews, like literally. And then it's like 1 or 2 goals for Matthew Nyes, who's a really good player out of the University of Minnesota. He's a big boy, and he's gonna be a big deal in this league if this team can figure this shit out. But you have all of these players.
Alert, Minnesota.
Well, I'm just saying, when the products are there, and he's playing on the top line, okay, him, Marner, and Matthews, but when Eddie, you've played like when you're not scoring and you're not supportive, and it's so easy to turn inward, right? And to not notice the bullshit going on around you, to not go to the defense of your teammate because you're so focused on your own shit. And then there's also like, why do you be worried about scoring rather than settling scores, which is partially true, but it's just between Toronto and Edmonton, it seems like this is the worst type of Mad Libs start to the season that they could possibly have, because they both have problems where it's usually the goaltending sucks but the scoring is there, or the scoring is not there but the goaltender's playing great. They have both problems right now, and both of them don't have the defensive core to sustain it either. I mean, like, Toronto's playing out there with Giordano on their second pair. And I know he's a journeyman. I know he's talented. I know he's a former captain of 2 teams in the Western Hemisphere, or the Western part of the United States / Canada. But the dude's like 40 years old. And Klingberg, this guy keeps getting run out of every town. He got run out of Anaheim for his brief stint there. Then he got traded to Minnesota. People wanted to get him the hell out of there for the half season.
Wait, he was in Dallas too, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, he was in Dallas for years, and then they had that contract standoff, and then they traded him to
team
1 year. He couldn't get anybody else to bite on him, so he signs a 1-year bargain deal in Anaheim last year. They flip him to Minnesota. He has a couple of rough games there, and he had a couple of good ones, and that's the boomer bust of John Klingberg. But he's supposed to be a game changer, and he answers to the same denominator that everybody else is, and that's the problem with Toronto. There's no galvanizer in that locker room. Like, Ryan Reeves is not a big enough galvanizer in that locker room, because he can't go out there and say, I'm gonna put the team on my back and score. And Austin Matthews can't do it all.
No, but he can galvanize the team by kicking the shit out of Brad Marchand.
That's different, though, Eddie. That's different shit. Different potion.
It's not. It wouldn't. That's a heavyweight fighting against Floyd Mayweather. I'm surprised it wasn't.
Period.
I'm surprised Domi.
Yeah, facts.
Didn't ring.
He's supposed to be a shitster, and Bertuzzi. Like, if he's not going to go score goals and be an absolute scrap house warrior in front of the net, he needs to be knocking some heads. And him laughing on the bench is not a good look. I don't care if that's your teammate. You're trying to ingratiate yourself into your new team. And the fucking media, they're torching this guy, and they should. But he's a shithead, and that's what he's always been. And he said he's not going to answer for it. And that's fine. And that's Tyler Bertuzzi. But know what you're signing up for. It's somebody that's not that. It's not that skin deep. This is a temporary tattoo, people. It's a 1-year deal. He's a temporary tattoo player.
Well, they've got a lot of problems. And you mentioned the scoring. Like, Austin Matthews is the only one. I think he's already got 2 hat tricks on this season.
Yeah.
But you know,
Nylander's got a 14-point game streak, right? They're getting some scoring.
Yeah,
it's not like they're losing 6-1. They're losing 6-4.
You know, like, and their goalie situation is not great, right? Like they don't have.
They bet on Matt Murray, and then they got caught in the bad part of the carousel. That's what happened.
Yeah, so you know, not a great tandem for them in net. But I watched a little bit of their game last night, and they either won 6-5 or lost 6-5. I don't remember because I didn't watch the end of it. But you know, Tampa for a while was just basically doing whatever the hell they wanted.
They put up 4 in the first period.
Yeah. And so
that's your response.
I think they've got problems. And you know, much like Edmonton, I almost wonder how hot the seat for Sheldon Keefe is. he's a guy who, guess what? You won a playoff series. That's not enough to keep your job. You don't have the equity of winning a Stanley Cup or making a final and giving hope to this organization and fan base who, look, I mean, we're talking 50 years almost since over 50 years, right? 1967. I can't do math, but I know it's a long fucking time ago. I mean, I'm 44 and it was 12 years before I was born. So we're talking 56 years since they've won a championship in Toronto. The sad reality is both the Toronto Blue Jays and the Toronto Raptors were born way after the last time the Leafs won a championship, and both have won titles in their respective sports. I mean, the Blue Jays went back-to-back in the 90s, and then, of course, the Raptors won a few years ago, and I don't know how deep the love affair is with the Argos, but the Argonauts have certainly, they won the Grey Cup last year. So, the fact that everyone in Toronto has won except the Leafs, it's kind of shitty,
It's kind of like when every team that in Vegas wins except the Raiders. Oh,
sure.
Okay, last segment of the day. The road ahead. Things get a little bit I don't want to say dicey. The Golden Knights have 7 games in 14 days starting tomorrow night. 2 homies
on the East Coast.
The Kings and then the Sharks on Friday night. But then they head east for the first big trip of the year, and they visit the Washington Capitals and President, whatever his name is. Then they go see Montreal, the Flyers, the Penguins, and the Dallas Stars on the way back. That's a pretty meaty road trip that prevents the Golden Knights from being here for the Formula One race.
Yeah, and they started out a road trip similar to last year. They had that opening game in Washington where they got down, came back, and I think Shea Theodore had a game winner in overtime or a shootout that kind of propelled them through that first big road trip where they ripped. Remember how good they were on the road and how good this Bruce Cassidy prepares this team for Eastern Conference teams. He's got the book on every one of these squads. They performed against them very well last season, and so I would anticipate something similar. But they have, like you said, a couple of home games against divisional opponents to make sure you get right and that you're getting the good habits down, because those are what you're going to want to rely on in the road when things get hard and you have to go and you have last change and you have to dig a little bit deeper for those wins. But I mean, the Capitals, I don't know if Ovechkin started scoring it, but Backstrom's out for a while. I mean, probably done, right?
Maybe done.
They're awful. I mean, Darcy Kemper, maybe you could catch him on a vibe, but probably not. And then Montreal, they gave us a pretty good game a couple of weeks ago. You got to make sure you don't get hit by Arbor Jackeye. Philly, they gave us a good game. Like, these are all tough games, but I think that's what this team needs, because everybody's saying they had a cream puff schedule to begin the year. And so it's time to up the challenge a little bit and command another level from yourself as you work your way back into hopefully another long playoff run.
Yeah, I think the East Coast road trip, like, I don't feel like it's going to tell us who this team is. We know who this team is. And, there'll be the emotional game in Pittsburgh. Obviously, Riley Smith being in Pittsburgh now. So, he'll get his ring, I think. And, I think they bring it to him. Like they brought it to Laurent Brossoit. I think they do. So Riley will get his ring, which is very cool for Riley. Still a favorite of mine. And, look, Philadelphia is we saw the Flyers here. They're no cupcake, right? They're not going to just lay down, despite the fact that the Kings boat raced them and smoked them the other day. But look, it's a good early season road trip, because I don't feel like it's the most difficult road trip of the season, because certainly you look at the schedule and there's some games that you're like, all right, the Golden Knights are better than these teams. They should win these games. It's not that South Florida where you're doing Florida, Tampa, and Carolina all in one road trip. You've got some winnable games there. It's not like the New York road trip where you're playing 3 pretty good NHL teams. So the next 2 games at home, I do think the Golden Knights will win both of those. They should. They just beat the Kings in LA a few weeks ago, but that's never a guarantee. But they should demolish the San Jose Sharks. And then look, you have that trip to the White House, which is obviously for some guys going to be a really big deal. And then you have that game against the Caps, and I think they'll be primed and ready to go for the Caps, because they always get up for Ovechkin, because there still are multiple members of this organization who know what Alexander Ovechkin did to them year one. And so it's never a game that they overlook. And look, you've got some winnable games. I think if they come back with 6 points on that road trip, you're certainly like, hey, you know what? Fantastic. There'll be people who say, well, that's not enough. But look, you've got 5 games, you split them 5-6 points. That's ideal. Like that's how you want to do on road trips. You want to come back 500. So I think it's a road trip where it could be very good for them. I also feel like it's a road trip where, hey, maybe the grind of the season starts to kick in and maybe you play a couple bad games and you drop some points. But I'm not too concerned about the way they play on this road trip. I think we know who they are. The main thing for me is just come back healthy before Thanksgiving and then gear up for the second third of the season.
That's it. We're wrapping it up. Episode 59 in the books. Oh my God, the sky is falling. Is officially over.
End the season, guys. End it. It's over.
It's over. Like us, subscribe to us. We had a very bad week in subscribers. We added 0.
Oh, shit.
We're stuck on 196. I don't know how 4 gold statues. I don't know how 4 gold statues, year 1 posters, and rally towers can't get you people to push the subscribe button. But God, don't make me beg. Anyway, like, subscribe. We'll be back next week. Thanks as always to the Las Vegas Advisor, www.lasvegasadvisor.com. Up there we have the barking puppy.
Say hi. Yeah.
Oh, where was? Oh, yeah. Las Vegas Advisor, your home for everything Las Vegas. Entertainment tips, restaurant tips, gambling tips, show tips. Any tip you need, anything information-wise you want about Las Vegas, go to the Las Vegas Advisor and by agelessforever.net. My good friend, Dr. John Pierce, concierge medicine for men and women, the best care you'll have, bar none. And I'm just saying that because he's my doctor. And it's true. We'll be back again next week for the big episode 60. We'll be back with you probably on the 15th, in between the Caps and the Habs game. Thank you all, as always. Hit the like and hit the subscribe, and we're out of here. Peace.